This is the Pharmaverse Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Pietrack, engaging leaders from the pharma universe. Welcome back to the Pharmaverse Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Pietrack. And if you're a leader or an aspiring leader in the pharmaceutical industry, you found the right podcast, because we interview the brightest stars from all the corners of the pharma universe. Today's guest is Joy Wright. She's the Vice President and Head of Talent Acquisition at Flagship Pioneering. And we're going to be discussing topics that range from building biotech companies from employee number one, how talent acquisition is using AI and machine learning, what it takes to be a leader within a small biotech. And we're also going to discuss the key attributes, the characteristics of the best leaders in industry. So Joy Wright, welcome to the Pharmaverse.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's great to be here.
Well, I have so many questions for you, and we only have 30 minutes, but I thought what would be good is for you to give the audience, a quick overview of your professional experience.
Sure, I'm happy to. So I like to describe my background as a three-legged stool of talent acquisition. So I spent 10 years early career in what we now call recruitment process outsourcing. I like to joke that I ran the first RPO deal ever at Kinexa. Teva Pharmaceuticals was my client, but I cut my teeth in life sciences in early career. I did a lot of work, obviously, with Teva, with Pfizer, research and development. I was up in Groton for a number of years with Amgen. And then I moved into the next leg of my career in executive search. And so I spent nearly 8 years in a boutique retained executive search firm, spent almost all that time in venture capital and private equity. I did a lot of work in healthcare, life sciences, even tech. And then I started this what I like to say the final leg of my career, which is building in-house executive search teams and now leading a talent team. So I joined IBM when they were building an in-house executive search team, and I got to see what it was like to build that from the beginning. And then I got tapped on the shoulder from Merck to do the same thing. And so I came in to lead that team. It was an amazing experience. And now I've had the chance to come to Flagship. And I joined Flagship in 2021, which was, we were right in the middle of the pandemic. And if you know who Flagship Pioneering is, you know that we're the founders of Moderna. And so we just had announced a huge fund, and we were about to embark on this incredible opportunity for scale. And so I've grown my team pretty drastically over the last 4 years. We've grown Flagship pretty drastically, and it's been an amazing ride.
Wow. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show. You have such a diverse background. Not a lot of people have the executive search background, the RPO background, and then in-house talent acquisition. My next question is, if you think about just the last handful of years, how has talent acquisition changed over that time period?
The biggest difference is what tech has brought to us, right? We know who the talent is. You and I both have been in this game a long time, right? I mean, even likely you, like me, were recruiting before LinkedIn was even a thing. And we didn't even know how we were going to get the names. Now, the names are at our fingertips, right? It's very easy to use tech to get the names. So we don't need search firms to tell us who the people are. What we actually have to figure out is, now that we know who they are, how do we identify as quickly as possible who the best fit for our role is, right? Who are the best and brightest? Who has the best reputations? Number two, how do we get to them? So how do we use our networks, whether we're using external partners or our own internal teams? What is the best strategy to get to those folks? And then if we get to them and the timing isn't right, how do we cultivate those relationships and ensure that we're staying close to them so that when the time is right, we can pull them into the right role? So I always say it's, right person, right seat, right time. And so you have to pull on all of those threads, and you have to have the right team to be able to do that.
Yeah. And like you said, you've been building your team of superstars there at Flagship Pioneering. One of the other things that has been really over the last year or less is this whole AI move. I get a lot of questions from job seekers that are applying to jobs, and they feel like some AI bot is screening them out. Now, I know you're not, an AI expert, machine learning expert, but what advice would you give to job seekers that feel like they're getting blocked by the AI machine?
AI is moving so quickly, right? I mean, faster than any of us who are not technologists can keep up with. But the reality is, yes, I mean, there are incredible tools that all of us in talent are using to try to figure out how do we take a candidate pool of 500 and shimmy it down to the 25 people we really should be looking at. And so, I guess the advice is, number one, are you applying to roles that you're actually a fit for? And if you are, and you feel like you're not making the cut, you're not getting the phone call, sometimes you do have to think outside of the box a little bit and not just rely on the tech. Like, this is why, to me, your network is what sells you. I mean, your network is everything in finding a new opportunity. So you use that tech and turn around on LinkedIn and figure out, who do I know at this company? Who do I think the hiring manager would be? Do I have any mutual connections? I mean, you have to get really creative to figure out, how do you go around those models that actually are really now being able to target who are the top 25 candidates for that role. And then the final thing I'll say on that, you and I both know what the biotech and pharma market is like today. I mean, there are 5x, in some cases 10x the applicants, because so many folks, especially in biotech, are being impacted.
Yeah, and I think you're right. You got to be savvy. You got to work around the system, use the tech to your advantage, find out who the hiring manager is, maybe reach out to that person. Don't just, apply and pray and hope that it comes around to you. And I agree with you. We have a saying at our firm, your network is your net worth. But also there at Flagship Pioneering, you have an ability to almost scrape all of LinkedIn to continually be looking for candidates that could be a fit. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, every company invests or uses LinkedIn, right? And we have to go beyond that in order to find the talent. I mean, there are talents in little pockets of the world, whether it's academia or within healthcare systems, right? Folks that actually in many occasions don't even have LinkedIn profiles. So for us, I mean, I have incredibly brilliant tech talent on my team, on the talent team, that are actually building these scraping models to go out and find the folks that are writing papers in the areas that, we're doing discovering science, that are speaking at conferences on the topics that we're excited about, that are the novel topics that, we're investing in. We use these models, and then we take all of this data in as a team, and we try to get really creative about how do we find the people that aren't just at the surface. You've got to scratch below if you want to find the best talent.
In our pre-show discussion, you were talking a little bit about attributes, that you're actually scraping for qualities. Tell me more about that. How do you guys discern that?
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? I mean, Flagship is such a unique place. It's so very different from big pharma, from traditional biotechs, from academia, right? Not only are we looking for the deep scientific acumen, right? Those folks that are just working on novel medicine and novel science, but we're looking for these, like, the pioneering and entrepreneuring attributes, right? Who are these folks that actually can come in and build pioneering culture builders, that are willing to take risks, right? Everything that we do at Flagship is unreasonable. I mean, we like to say, we're focused on the mission impossible. So we're trying to take and find folks who are willing to go on these unreasonable missions. And so for us, that's, it's about finding that talent that are focused on those things, but then can be compelling storytellers, right? That are on a mission to change the world in a really unique way.
I really like the play on pioneering. That's a quality. Not everybody is the pioneering spirit.
That's exactly right. And for us, I mean, if you look at, we have all these amazing taglines, right? But it's, for us, it's future backwards. And so Newbar always says it's, trust your crazy ideas. We say, what if, and we design the perfect future state, and then we work backwards to figure out how we're going to get there. So it's been a fascinating, education on how actually, even in human resources, you can be a pioneer.
I love that. I'm going to steal those: future backwards, and then trust your crazy ideas.
Right. I think we've trademarked them, but you can try.
Okay. I'll steal them internally.
Yeah.
But a lot of our listeners are new managers that are looking for leadership nuggets. They haven't done a ton of hiring, and therefore they haven't done a bunch of interviewing. And interviewing is not something that, like, there's a school to go to learn how to interview. So I am dying to know, and I'm sure our listeners are, to get one joyride pearl about interviewing advice.
I'm going to go back to a term that I just used, but it's storyteller, right? When you're interviewing, you need to be able to tell your story, first of all, right? I mean, you need to be able to command the conversation and tell the person interviewing you who you are, what your values are, what you stand for, how you're going to show up. And so for me, when I'm interviewing executives, that storytelling component is the number one thing. So you have to have that down, especially if you're going to be interviewing for, for roles earlier in your career.
I've been saying that for years. The best interviewers are the best storytellers. When you're evaluating talent, is there a pearl of wisdom that you can give a person there?
We can get so much from an interview, right? And so you have to really understand, number one, as an individual interviewer, what you're looking for, right? But I also think there's a lot of value in ensuring that the interview team is aligned, because quite frankly, I mean, that's where the pitfalls in hiring happen. When you get to the end of an interview process and you realize the 4 people making the decision had a completely different, understanding of what the job was or what they were looking for. So that's kind of the first piece of advice. If you're especially a young group of interviewers, is make sure you all know what it is that you want and what you're looking for. And then I think in our process, and what has always been my process in executive recruiter, is the person that walks into the room that you spend time with is one piece of the story, but you've got to get under the hood to figure out actually who is this individual, right? So you're an executive recruiter. Back channel referencing is everything that we do, right? As you get through the referencing process, it's making sure that you're having all the right conversations to understand, is this person who they say they are? Who are they at their best? Who are they at their worst? What impact have they truly had in your organization? I think that helps you make the right decision. But more importantly, if you do select this person, their manager then knows how to get the best of them, knows what they need for development, knows what the future will look like with them. So I think that for me is always, with my team, I'm always making sure, have we really checked every box in the referencing and we know exactly who we're hiring and how to help them be successful.
Yeah, those are great pearls of wisdom, especially the first one about aligning. I mean, as an executive recruiter, and you've been in my seat, it's like we're shopping for different things. And how could you ever have alignment? So it's good to have that sort of mindset going in. Great advice.
At the end of a search, you always take a look and figure out, okay, where could we have done a better job? And I'm sure you agree, 9 times out of 10, when a search took too long, the reason is because at the beginning, all the stakeholders weren't on the same page.
So true. This episode is brought to you by K. Bassman International, the leader in pharma and biotech recruiting. When pharma executives need to make critical hires, they go to the experts at K. Bassman, pharma's one-source staffing solution. Visit kbic.com. Now back to the episode. Now, you've touched on this, but I just maybe we could elaborate on it. I got to think, when you're in your recruiter seat and you're recruiting for, insert big pharma name with armies and armies of people, versus recruiting for Flagship Pioneering, where they're going to potentially be N of 1 for a second. How different is that recruiting process?
Yeah, it's funny. I always tell people, when I was at Merck and I interviewed for this role, in my final interview with Nubar, he said to me, Joy, I'd really like you to join our team, but before you do that, I want you to forget everything you learned at Merck. And so I was sort of puzzled by that. But now that I'm here, I completely get it. We hire a lot of folks that do come out of big pharma, right? The deep scientific acumen is so critical, but the person you're looking for is different, right? You are looking for people who are willing to take incredible risk. That's not big pharma, right? When you're hiring executives for big pharma, you want people who are going to come in that have an immediate plan for how they're going to take a drug through the clinic, how they're, going to deliver value. Whereas for us, we want people that are coming in that are willing to embrace these crazy ideas and experiment. Everything we do at Flagship is an experiment, and you have to be willing to live in this incredible uncertainty and take incredible risks, because we're willing to make the impossible possible. Like, we're willing to do whatever it takes to think about these crazy ideas and figure out actually how we're going to make them work. That's just the major difference.
Yeah. And I got to think, when you're trying to dig into the attributes of the candidate, you're looking for those attributes. Are there other attributes besides the, not being risk adverse, wanting to take on mission impossible? Are there other attributes that you look for too?
I think for us, there's got to be a humbleness to the leaders at Flagship, right? Like the egos have to stay at the door. If you think about the IQ at Flagship, the IQ at Flagship is through the roof. Everybody walking the halls at Flagship, almost everyone who's in a non-support role is from Harvard or MIT or, one of the best scientific institutions in the world. And they're just brilliant minds, right? And so, you have to be willing to realize that you're not going to be the smartest person in the room. And you've got to be comfortable in a culture of debate and willing to push back and stand your ground and offer your opinion, but also know that your opinion may not be the one that gets chosen, right? And be comfortable enough to be okay with that. It's one of the biggest pieces of our selection process is figuring out, particularly at the executive level, is this someone who has a playbook that they're expected to come in and run? And that's the way they're going to view this role. They're going to come into whatever company it is at Flagship or Flagship itself and join and run their playbook. That's not the person for us, right? You've got to be someone who wants to bring all of your ideas, expertise, experience, values, and be willing to join a team. And we like to say play doubles tennis, which, by the way, very, very hard to get in a conversation. That's why referencing is so, so important in our business, because you have to know how other people feel about working with these folks.
There's great insights, amazing insights. And I'm just so fascinated by what you do, because a lot of the companies that our recruiting firm works for, they have the C-suite level there already. Typically. So when you're building a company from ground zero, like nobody's there, is it typically the CEO is the first hire? Like, give me a sequence of the first few hires.
Yeah, that's a great question. So you have to understand a bit about the Flagship model. So at Flagship Pioneering, we have teams of company originators. And so it's not the CEO that is the first hire. Actually, we don't even think about bringing a CEO in until we're closer to raising a Series B. So the company may already have 15, 20, 30 employees in place. Because we have the founders and the founding executives that are building these companies, and most of them are building multiple companies at a time, right? Like, to give you a sense, my team today, there's 28 companies that we're building simultaneously, right? So you may have a senior principal at Flagship who is founding a company. They've got another company they founded a year ago. So it starts with the scientific talent. We cover all of the functions, right? So that's kind of the cool thing about the Flagship model is we have the HR talent, the finance, real estate, legal, communications. We build these companies from the ground up and we partner with the scientific folks. When we begin to get to the executive team building, it's usually actually the CSO or the platform officer that we're bringing in first, because we want to solidify the science, the tech, and then the CEO usually comes when we get closer to the B.
You said real estate. Just a quick question. Are less and less small biotechs investing in real estate? It seems like the virtual model, was there for a second. Now it seems like there's a call to office. Give us a read on that.
Yeah, I would definitely say the call to office is for sure, right? Flagship, we are an in-person culture. We joke that you can ride your bike to every single one of our companies in Cambridge. And so Flagship is, we have this really interesting and unique model where we co-locate companies. So we've been, very blessed to have an amazing real estate investment team. I'll be honest, I can't really comment on what, the singular biotechs are doing. I know in Boston and even, in Philadelphia and other major cities, there are a lot of, the build out lab space where, investors are actually coming in and building state-of-the-art lab space and then leasing it to these very small biotechs. I know in Philadelphia, they have one called B Labs. Actually, our companies in Cambridge are at a site where they've got one of those as well. So it's funny, when in 21, we used to say the biggest thing keeping our CEOs up at night was talent and lab space. But then that sort of all changed, right? It's interesting to watch the turnaround.
You have a cool job. What a fun job, I got to say.
I like to say it's the most unique job in talent because it's not just talent, right? What I love most about the culture at Flagship is that we are all company builders, right? We are part of teams that are, we stay up at night thinking about all the same things that our founders and our origination team leaders do, right? We want these companies to be successful, and we're all in to do, roll up our sleeves and help wherever we need to help to make the impact.
Yeah, so fun, so exciting. I want to switch gears a little bit because you said something in our pre-show discussion that is sort of near and dear to me. You said that leaders of small biotechs need to be talent magnets. What did you mean by that?
Well, we love to use the word talent magnet when we're recruiting, right? In some cases, there are only a few people in the world that can do some of the jobs that we're doing because the science is so novel. It's so new that it may only exist in a few labs around the world. And so for us, I need my company builders, which are my hiring managers, to be active on social, right? I need them to be sharing the talks that they're doing at conferences. I need them to be out there with their own persona so that they can attract the young talent to their companies. If you as a hiring manager are not working closely with us and helping us go out there and tell your story, we're not able to bring the right talent to you. So that's one piece of it. I also think, you've worked with CEOs and other executives that have, are very seasoned in their career and just, they have teams that follow them. And, they walk into a company and the day they begin, they're sending us resume after resume after resume of people that have worked with them in the past, right? And that's because they're a talent magnet. People love working for them. They're out there with their own persona about where they're going to do their best work, and people want to be part of that.
You're preaching to the choir, first of all, because I wrote an article about personal branding for executives, because I think it's a big thing. But I think a lot of leaders are a little bit apprehensive about it. They don't know what to do. Get more involved in social to them is like, I don't even know where to start. Get a little bit granular, if you don't mind. What are the best talent magnets doing to create a personal brand, specifically on, let's say, LinkedIn or other social media?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, there are some executives that don't even think about LinkedIn, right? It's sort of like, oh, I had to put a profile up there, so I did. Yeah, but I never look at it. I haven't looked at it. And I think for us, it's about coaching them on, number one, how are you sharing the story of what you're building, right? So if you think about Flagship, you want them talking about the companies that they're building. You want them to be focused on, how do I get speaking engagements? How am I working with my communications partners to figure out what are the conferences that are important? Are there areas that I can actually submit to be a speaker, to be part of a panel, right? If you're really looking to control your career and develop that leadership persona, I think the people that do that well, it's amazing what they're able to be part of. And not only, how it helps them in their own career and the companies they're building, but how it gives back to the younger generation of leaders that are coming behind them. But also it's the engagement, right? You and I both know how these social algorithms work, right? Engagement is important, and making sure that they're sharing content, liking content, commenting. And we will tell our hiring managers, I just posted your role. I want you to go and share it. You can look at how the algorithms tell us what, the data is. You're getting thousands of hits versus the 5 that the recruiter might get, right? So it's really important that they just begin to be engaged. So that's the way that we coach them.
Let's talk about qualities of leaders, like when they're actually managing other people. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is because you have such an amazing vantage point to some of the best leaders in the entire industry. So now you've interviewed them, now they're on board, and now they're starting to build teams. What do you see them doing? What qualities do you see them doing when they're leading other people actually in the trenches?
Yeah, I feel like maybe this is an overused term, but I really do believe in authentic leadership. Just those leaders that truly care about their teams, that have a real point of view about the culture that they want to build. They're willing to be part of every conversation. They're amazing listeners. And, for me, gosh, that listening piece is so important. And when I think about the executives that I love to work with most at Flagship or probably anywhere, they're probably the busiest people if you looked at their calendars. But when you have 5 minutes with them, everything is set aside. You have their full attention. They listen, they engage, they understand what you're asking, they give their opinion on what you need an opinion on, and then quickly figure out what are our next steps.
Man, that hits me right in the heart. I got to do better at that. Man.
We all do, right? We all do.
So I have about 5 people that would kill me if I didn't ask you this next question. Okay. So a lot of executives want to become board members at small biotechs. What advice would you give them to be strongly considered for a board seat? Because it seems like if you've never been on a board, it's almost impossible to get on a board.
It's so true. And it's an interesting timing of the topic because I'm just started to really spend a lot of time focused on what it means to build boards at Flagship. And so a lot of time on the very early stage boards, it's really the scientific acumen you're looking for, right? Because while you're proving out the platform and the strategy of the company, you don't really need the BD expertise yet. You don't need the audit chair. You don't need the comp committee chair. So whether it's, a company that's going to do a tremendous amount of BD in a space that, you just happen to be an expert in, I hate to say that it all goes back to the network, but it does go back to the network, right? It's about building relationships with other board members to understand how they got those seats and how do you stay top of mind when people are asking them, who do you know for this board seat? And then the last thing I'll say is it's really, really important to build relationships with executive recruiters. And, I think sometimes executives think, well, I'm not looking for a role or, I've never really valued that. And I'll tell you what, we all know most of those roles are being filled by executive recruiters. And so you've got to know who the great ones are in your space. And those relationships are so, so critical.
Thanks for the plug on the executive recruiters.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Appreciate that. So one last question. I ask everybody on the show the same question, and it's for the aspiring leaders, because a lot of our audience are people who want to become a leader and are trying to position their career or do something to get a chance. What advice would you give to either someone aspiring to be a leader or someone breaking into their first leadership role?
I guess I would say you have to be a hand raiser. For me, I've been managing teams for 25 years now, right? And every time I think about who's my internal leading candidate for a role, it's the person who always raised their hand and said, I can do more. How can I help? I want to learn. What else can I do? And I think every team that I've led, it's those people who always want to learn and take on more responsibility are the ones that are going to be first ready for the leadership roles, right? Because they're willing to do it without, I need a raise, I need a bigger title. They just want to expand their experience to know that when the time is right, I'm probably going to be the person to be called on.
Great advice. Thank you so much. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this show. That went fast.
They always go quick, don't they?
Well, there's just so many insights, so many useful, very practical tips that you gave us. So I speak for everyone listening. Thank you so much. Very interesting discussion. And thank you for being a guest on the Pharmaverse.
It's my pleasure, Michael. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, that concludes another episode of the Pharmaverse Podcast. We have many more leaders lined up for you. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the insights that are to come. But for now, that's a wrap. See you next time on the Pharmaverse. Thanks for joining us on the Pharmaverse Podcast. Make sure you subscribe below so you don't miss any leadership insights. Like and comment. I would love to hear from you. We'll see you on the next episode of Pharmaverse.